answer questions. So then I'll host it.
All right. A very good evening, residents of Bukit Batok, or as Dr. Chee would say, Babukit. Welcome to tonight's AMA with Dr. Chee Sun-Chuan of the SDP. Well, just some ground rules before we begin. If you want to ask a question, just type in your name, followed by your block number, then your question in the chat box, okay? Now, we do have to keep the meeting to 45 minutes, and if there are too many questions, we would regrettably not be able to answer them all, but we will definitely endeavor to do so, okay? Finally, we ask that all of you respect this space. It's a space for discussion, so let's respect each other and not resort to flaming or any personal attacks, okay? Thank you. If an individual is disruptive, we will unfortunately have to remove him or her from the chat, okay? So, without further ado, let's start off with the first question. Let's go. Aloysius Lee says hi. Hello, Aloysius. Hi, William.
Hi, William. Hi, everyone.
Saga says hi.
First of all, I just want to thank all of you for coming in and welcome you to this chat. I just wanted to have this time to get to know all of you, even if it's from a distance through Zoom. I wish I could have everybody in a room where we're seated together and having this nice chat, but unfortunately we can't. So the next best thing is to have this. Still, I just want to tell you I'm so happy to be here, and I hope to hear from all of you and have this nice chat.
Okay, Dr. Chee, we have our first question.
Sure.
It's from NA from block 140. So she asks if you could share some success stories from SDP from Bukit Gombak. Success stories.
Sure. You know, I'm sorry, I just saw that question in there. Was it about, can you repeat the question? You were breaking up.
So she asked if there are any success stories from SDP from Bukit Gombak.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You know, that was many moons ago, right? When we were running the town council in Bukit Gombak. I remember at that time, the feedback from the residents was very positive, and Mr. Ling Hao Dong, who was the MP at that time, the one thing that he emphasized was always on cleanliness of the estate. And on Sundays, sometimes when we go walk about with him, he would actually pick up a broom and you know, the water hose. And when he saw things not quite right, he would actually get on to it himself and make sure he cleaned the place up. So we learned, at least I learned a lot, and I just had joined the opposition then, the SDP, and it gave me a very good grounding in terms of how the estate would be run. And he emphasized so much on the estate manager that it's just, look, you hear that one light bulb is not working, you respond within and he gave them a time frame. And I think things were done very quickly. So in the end, the feedback, the record was very positive. And even finances, you know, they rate all the different councils. SDP's finances at that time was always, you know, as far as the auditor was concerned, always we came through very nicely.
All right, that's great. Dr. Chee, just a couple of questions which are about the same questions. All right, so basically they're asking if you could share the vision for Bukit Batok if you were to win.
You know, the most fundamental duty, responsibility of an MP is to make sure that the estate is safe, and clean, and functioning efficiently. That's the number one priority of the way I see it. But over and above those duties, I don't see an MP just sitting down and you know, town council chairman holed up in your office the whole day, looking at counting numbers, this and here and there. I see the MP's role as getting out and making sure you get to know the people, and more than just being an MP, I just want to be your friend. And it's only when I get to know you, whether it's in your homes or whether in the coffee shops or whether it's at forums that we're going to organize. If I don't know you, then how am I going to claim to represent you in Parliament, right? So these are the things that I find hugely important, and also to be, not just an estate manager, but to be someone that inspires the residents here to come together and be a community instead of just a constituency. And when we do that, my dream, my goal is to turn Bukit Batok into, I don't mean to be corny, but I really believe that we can do it. Turn Bukit Batok into this shining city on a hill. You've heard that phrase before, and to make us feel really proud. So when somebody asks you, hey, where are you from? Then we can say, I'm a Batokian, and we say it with pride. So that's how I see it, and to mold the whole entire constituency into one community where people care and look out for one another.
All right, great. So we have another question from Melanie from Block 190. Now, Melanie, you have a couple of questions. You actually have, let me see here, 6 questions. So I won't be able to ask all of them at one shot because we've got other questions to go through, but I will ask Dr. Chee one question for you, which is, so Dr. Chee, you mentioned allocating a portion of your MP salary to help low income, create activities for elderly and enrichment education programs. A portion is also not a lot. How are you going to go about fulfilling all these big plans with just that portion?
Hi, Melanie. Thanks for coming in. Sure. It's something which I believe that if we were going to use this and use it as seed money to start a trust fund, if you will, and then we get people to buy in, Singaporeans who are better off, who can afford helping each other out, whether it's within Bukit Batok or even outside of Bukit Batok, to be able to buy in, right? And feel that we're all part of this community, and that I've always felt that to be able to give, it's better than to receive. And that's something which is very ingrained in me. And so I would like to be able to start that. And then to motivate and inspire our Singaporeans to take care of people who are much more vulnerable than us. And I think if we begin to do that, one of the roles, as I said, of the leader in the community is not just to count your dollars and cents, do your sums here and there. It really is to inspire people to want to do something more, something beyond themselves, to build up a community. And that's how we're going to do it, to start this trust fund, and using the portion, as I said, of my MP allowance. It's just a seed money, and to make sure that things grow and snowball from there.
Okay, so we have here RZ, who is going to tag on Melanie's question. He's from Block 296B. And basically, this is with regards to the unfounded fears that once a SMC turns into an opposition ward, that constituency will deteriorate and drop in its resale value. So what do you have to say to these people?
All I just want to do is just refer you to in other constituencies that have been held by the opposition. I know, for example, that when we held Bukit Gombak and Nee Soon Central and Potong Pasir, and Workers' Party was running Hougang, the flat prices never dropped. But the problem is now the resale value of flats will come down, not because it's run by an opposition party, but because of this 99-year lease. But that, as you know, is all over Singapore, and no matter where you're standing in this PAP-run ward or an opposition-run ward, that's how things are going to work out, simply because of the 99-year lease. I can, this much I will promise you, in terms of just the upkeep of the estate, it will be no different from any other opposition ward. In fact, I dare say that, because sometimes PAP MPs, they tend to take their positions for granted. They think, hey, you know, I'm going to win this election anyway, and they don't really pay full attention to discharging their responsibilities. And then you get problems in as far as the municipal issues are concerned, the infrastructure and safety and cleanliness of the place. So it can, the perception that always an opposition-run ward is not as taken care of as well as PAP-run wards, not true. Absolutely not true.
Also, to link to that, Dr. Chee, I think they're also concerned if the current 5-year plans under the current incumbent, with Bukit Batok specifically, that have been promised, linkways and NRP, etc., will they proceed or be stalled or cancelled totally?
It will not be cancelled. It will not be stalled. As long as I am the MP, we are going to hold their word to it, and that they will not be able to try to make it as if that, oh, it doesn't qualify right now as far as this estate is concerned. And existing contracts, we will make sure that they're completed, and that they will proceed on and be completed without any fanfare. So these are the things that we will see to it. And as I said, you know, many of these projects are also being carried out without too much of a problem in the opposition-held wards. They were seen in the past as well as presently. So I really don't see a problem in there as far as the completion and the continuing on of linkways, walkways. All these things will proceed. This much I will tell you. I'll pledge to you.
Okay. Okay, we have another question. I think we can combine some of these questions because they are pretty similar. But basically, like, they're asking, if you go on to Parliament, and for example, on SDP's CPF policies, specifically regarding the age 55 opt-in, and let's say if you are elected or any of the other SDP candidates are elected, and the proposals that you propose fail to get through the ruling party, will you still propose other ways to help the CPF policies or any other policies that you propose? Is there a plan A, and if it fails, what is plan B, and how will you challenge this difficulty faced?
Right. You know, when we get into Parliament, I don't believe this time round there will be a lot more opposition MPs getting elected. Let's say, supposing we managed, the opposition voters get 20 odd, 30 odd opposition MPs in the Parliament, all right? And we are shy of, say, the 50% mark, right? When you go in there and you make a cogent argument, you present facts, you present your reason, you present statistics to show how Singaporeans, in this situation, your CPF, for example, how retirees cannot continue to do without income, right? Then you reach across the aisle, so to speak, and reach out to PAP MPs, right? And when that, you use the force of persuasion, the force of logic, to make them see how they must support this policy in terms of what we're proposing, and that is to ensure that retirees get a $500 monthly income. Otherwise, how are they going to live? How are they going to survive in this day and age, right? And then persuade PAP MPs to support this policy. And if they refuse, then it's going to be, during the election time, you know who are the ones that are that continue to hold out even for as reasonable a policy as providing some form of income for our retired elderly people. And when you do that, that's how you're going to make progress, right, in terms of policy making. And I hope at least some of the PAP MPs don't stick to their dogma, are not afraid and continue to be obedient to the party whip, but see reason. Because you were elected by the people, okay? And you are, the people are the ones that you've got to lean on and represent. And I know that a majority of Singaporeans want so much because they cannot get at their CPF and they don't know how to make ends meet when they're retired. So these are some of the things that we can do and make sure that Singaporeans and make sure that the MPs, Parliament, work together for the good of Singaporeans. But you must have MPs who do their homework so that when we get into Parliament, we are speaking up with facts, with logic. So that's really hard to deny when we present our case across in such a manner. And I think we're going to be able to make headway in these, as far as these policies are concerned.
Great. Okay, we have another question from Lawrence. Lawrence lives at 293C. Now, he would like to ask about the SDP manifesto and how do you mean to encourage entrepreneurship, and could you elaborate on that?
Hi, 293C. Are you on Skype? Welcome, Lawrence. So, can you repeat that question? You were cracking up again.
Entrepreneurship. So how will you encourage that? Entrepreneur.
Right. You know, this is such a huge question and such an important question. I thank you for bringing it up. The world is changing, and it has changed. If we don't change, if we don't adapt with it, we are going to be left behind. I keep citing this example, right? Your most entrepreneurial people, whether it's your Steve Jobs or your Jeff Bezos or your J.K. Rowling's, people who are creative and innovative, they don't come from North Korea. And there's a reason why. Because when your society is free, when you're not bogged down, you're not stifled by the government telling you what you can think, what you cannot say, how to react, how to behave all the time, you're not free to be who you are. And once you don't have that, all your creativity goes out the window. And that's where I worry in terms of us catching up. And when you look at our schools, creativity just doesn't come, when you hit 30, or when you're an adult, right? It must be nurtured. But when you look at our schools, they're so exam oriented. My kids actually are just going through these exams as well. And you see whether it's primary 5, when you take your gifted education program, and then they saddle you with then PSLE, and after that you've got your aptitude test or your streaming exams in the secondary 2, and then O levels and then A levels. It's exam after exam after exam. And they plonk the work in front of you. Teachers I know who are my friends, right? They tell us there's so much syllabus that they have to cover, they don't have time to teach, right? So what do your students learn? They just learn 10-year series. And if you cannot cope, go find a private tutor. And almost every student I know has got private tuition. What is that doing to the minds of our students? You are not teaching them what's important. We're not teaching them independent, critical thinking. When you don't have that, even after you leave school, and then you're faced with a society, with a government that is bearing down on you all the time, you're left with a society that is very dry, that doesn't have that creative spirit, entrepreneurial spirit. And then you couple that with the fact that government, through their GLCs, are involved with almost every industry that you can find in Singapore. You are stifling the kind of creativity and innovative spirit in Singapore. And then before you know it, like what we're seeing right now, we haven't got an entrepreneurial class. And as we move ahead, I tell you seriously, we're already beginning to see signs of it. I've been saying this for a long time, many times. In the last couple of decades, we have not been productive. Productivity has been going down. Economic growth has not been moving to the way that we see it, and all we are continuing to do is just to depend on our past success. And as I said, because the world is changing, international economic system is changing. We continue to do that. We're just going to go downhill.
All right, we have another question here from Ava from Block 296C. So she says that she understands that bread and butter as well as estate-related issues are important, but she would really like to find out what is your ultimate aim in the parliament, to push for further liberalization, and it also pertains to the quotation marks, check and balance, end quote, idea that many opposition parties speak of.
Yeah, I think that they're very important, but I think we should be able to do more than one thing at any one time. The Americans have the saying, you can chew gum and walk at the same time, right? Well, in the work that we do in Parliament, it's very important that we are able to make sure that we take care of bread and butter issues, right? Provide some kind of livelihood, some income for the elderly. And in this case, as I said, we present our retirement income scheme for the elderly, where we provide $500 for 80% of the bottom elderly segment demographic, as well as to make sure that our retrenched workers, as we go forward, we're going to see a lot more retrenchments. These workers must be protected, must be taken care of, because they have children to look after. What do you want them to do? All of a sudden, through no fault of theirs, they get retrenched, their income stops coming, but they've still got bills to pay, right? So we've got to be able to take care of that. And at the same time, I mentioned a little earlier on, we must cast our vision longer in longer term. We've got to start now to make sure that our students, our children, all receive the kind of education that will prepare them and go into the future. We have right now a class of 40 students, right? And that's just not going to cut it. Okay, we have, and it's in our manifesto as well, we have to cut down the number of student-teacher ratio 20-1. And teachers have kept telling us that, in a class of 40 versus a class of 20, you just imagine the way that they begin to respond to students. They can give them more personal attention, right? And then make sure we cut down on the syllabus, expand the curriculum, teach more, have more subjects, but then have it in such a way that they don't have to keep memorizing and then regurgitating all the information during the exams. So these are things that we want to be able to pursue, to champion when we are in Parliament, and to make sure that we are able to get these things going at the same time. And there's one thing that I think what we must do. MPs, opposition MPs included, especially opposition MPs, must sit and be able to propose bills, private members' bills is what they call it, right? Put it out there. Of course, you need to get people to do the research, the background work, and so on and so forth. But put it out there and table it for debate in Parliament. And then you make the PAP side, if they reject it, make sure they will have to come in and say why. And very often, as I said, you put something out there and it makes sense to people. Singaporeans can see it. I think the PAP MPs would then start making fools of themselves if they objected to it just because the bill didn't come from within their party. So these are the things that are initiatives that I think that we can do as opposition MPs, and there are many things that we can begin to push for and stimulate the debate within Parliament.
All right, Dr. Chee. Here is another question from Brenda Lau. She's from 9 Bukit Batok Central Link. So she asked how did you derive the $500 figure for the retirees?
Thanks, Brenda, for your question. The last household expenditure survey that was conducted in 2019 they conduct this survey, it's massive survey. So they do it every once in 5 years. And in that survey, the average retiree household, not individual, household, the survey found that parents, elderly parents, retired parents, get financial support from their working children. And the average sum was about $485 or something like this, right? Very close to $500. Now, that's how we came up with that number. And when you take into consideration the fact that in one of the research that was done by the LKY's SPP, the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, did a survey and found that retirees, for them to be able to, live with basic conditions in Singapore today, they need about $1,300 to $400 a month. Okay, so $500 doesn't quite cover anything, right? And their average payout from CPF is about $280. You do a quick calculation, they still fall very far short of what they need to be able to just live from day to day. And so that $500 that we've proposed is to relieve working adults of this financial pressure of having to then feed their children, put food on the table for the family, and then at the same time have to look after their retired parents, correct? So if you were to be able to provide for these retired elderly folks that $500, it also means that it relieves the pressure of their working children of having to support them, pay this amount for the upkeep every month. So this is the figure that we have feel that Singapore can afford. I want also to answer this, preempt your question, anticipate your question by saying that the amount of money, $500 per retiree, we have estimated it'll come up to about $2.8 billion a year. That may sound a lot, until you think that if we actually use not our reserves, but the income that we derive from our reserves, which is, I think, if we use even 50% of that, half of the income of our reserves, it's about 18 or $19 billion a year. Just imagine, we're asking for that $2.8 billion to let our retired elderly people breathe a little easier, right? To be able to afford that cup of coffee, and they don't have to keep working in back-breaking jobs. I was down in one of the coffee shops on Sunday. I met this old man. I asked him, how old was he? He said 78. And he was still pushing that cart, okay, collecting dishes and trying to wipe down the tables. Why do we do this? Why do we do this to our elderly? Would you allow that, your grandparents to go through that? And this is why I think it's such, I don't want to use, I think it's such a sin for our society to continue to subject our elderly people to such inhumanity. So look, $500 is not a lot. We've just got to get our priorities right. What we spend on, okay? We spend on $1.8 billion on Jewel Changi, which is, I don't know why they do it. There's already an oversupply of retail space. And yet and just before even the COVID-19 pandemic broke, all right, Jewel Changi was not already doing well. Why, are you surprised? It's cannibalizing the market and all the heartland malls and everything. And they spend all that money into building this, what I see will be very soon a white elephant. Whilst we keep stinging, the Americans say nickel and dime our elderly citizens, that's just not right. And you hear of this whole thing about retirees now that are cash asset rich and cash poor. That's not true, right? Even as far as assets are concerned, their old aging flats will decline in value until it becomes worthless, zero in value when 99 years are up. So let's have a serious rethink about this policy, about where we're going, and send us into Parliament so that we can have serious debate on this matter. Thanks again so much for your question, Brent.
Okay. Dr. Chee, I think there are also a couple of questions with regards to the ongoing pest problem in Bukit Batok. Also with regards to a lift that dropped very suddenly, a couple of floors. And if you look back at the history of Bukit Batok within the last 5 years, the fires and stuff, could you just comment on that, and how, as if you were to be the MP, how are you going to address all these issues?
You know, I mentioned earlier the most fundamental responsibility of an MP is to make sure, because the responsibility of managing your estate has been now entrusted upon the MP. The first thing that you not need to do is to ensure the safety of residents. Last year, I heard there was a fire that broke out in Block 210A. A couple of mornings later, I visited the block. But even before I could go up to the unit, I think it was on the 13th floor, a few residents saw me at the void deck. And they just started shouting, "Bo Chui, Bo Chui, no water, no water." I didn't know at first what they were so concerned about. So, but then when I found out, then that first the cabinet, the hose reel cabinet, was padlocked. And then when it was finally the lock was broken, SCDF personnel were there. They pulled out the hose reel and there was no water. The water supply was cut off because the water tank on top, the water was turned off. The fire raged on for that few crucial minutes. The family, I think they were in their 60s already. The father and son actually climbed over the parapet of the kitchen. When I was up there and I looked down from the 13th floor, I'm not good with heights, and I could feel it was so scary. You just imagine for someone to be so desperate to climb out on the kitchen, just because the fire was so intense, was just something I just cannot imagine. And as it turned out, one of the residents there passed away because of injury due to the fire. Now, Mr. Murali actually came out and took responsibility for it, and he apologized, and I commend him for it. The problem was that how did it come to such a basic thing when a fire hose reel cabinet was locked, and worse, that the fire was that didn't have any water supply. Look, I don't mean for an MP to check every hose, to look into every drain. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that an MP must be physically present so that you can ensure that the contractors are doing the jobs, and if they are not doing the jobs, right, to make sure that you are there and you have to take decisive, swift action. No ifs, ands, or buts when it comes to the safety of the residents. Now, after that episode happened, I thought that, things would, that the town council would just pay a little bit more attention to safety matters. Just imagine my shock when I went down to Block 155. I saw there was an open area beside the food center. The pavement was all dug up, and around it, there was no safety cordon. This was a food center. Children are running back and forth, and there's no safety cordon, right? And then just a few blocks down, you have there was a renovation for the shop houses. And again, beams were now erected, but it was now fixed halfway. Again, no cordon. No, 99% of the time, nothing happens. But that one time, when something happens, like in Block 210A, tragedy strikes. This is why I keep saying that, MPs must do their work full time, so that they can be there to make sure that everything is taken care of, and make sure that the safety of the residents are given top priority.
Okay, I've also got a couple of questions here which kind of like are very similar. I'm just gonna like collate them into one. Basically, the concern is that um, like there are people who will vote for you without a second thought, but there are also a number of people who are concerned about your past history, your seeming aggression, and also they are concerned that if you get into parliament, the PAP will try to trap you and trick you out so that you show your aggressiveness and then povma you or something like that. So what is your comment?
I think that's a very relevant question, a very justified one. If you watched a video which I put up a couple of days ago, I hope people can begin to see what the role of an MP is. It's something which you've got to feel passionate about. If you're going in there just to say, okay, I have to go there and say something or mark my attendance, then what's the point? What's the point of electing somebody who's not going to be there wholeheartedly for you? And as I've said, when you do something, when you're focused on that particular work that you're doing at that time, for me at least, I put in that 100%. Whether it's I'm out doing my exercise, training for my triathlon, or then, if not, then writing my books. I always give that 100%. Okay, and when I give my 100%, I'm just focused. And sometimes, for example, when I go out and train, and I get very tired, and people walk past me, and sometimes they look at me and they smile, and sometimes I catch myself because I'm not looking at them, just because and then when I do actually catch them and I tell them, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you, but it's just sometimes just very focused on what I'm doing. I just want to tell people that just because I'm focused, it doesn't mean that, and I look very serious and I'm smiling and that kind of thing. They're not feelings of aggression, right? They're not feelings of agitation. But sometimes because I'm focused on what I'm doing, it may come across that I'm not as friendly as I can be. But you know that when I'm out on the street, right, whether it's at the MRT station, I see you, or the coffee shop, you've seen me before, haven't you? And my colleagues tell me, hey, when you're out like that, your face lights up. And I must say it's because I am genuinely just happy to be, amongst the people. But when I'm in Parliament, I'm just going to be focused and to make sure that when you do your job right, and then you make sure that you don't get personal. All right. Once you get personal, that's where everything goes out the window. Your plans go awry. But when you're focused and you make sure that you present the facts and reasonable arguments, and you force that then to reason with you as well, I don't see how they can trap you or make you do the things that you don't want to do. So I think on this matter, I'm very much in control of my emotions, where you want to be, when, what you want to say, and how do you want to say it. So I say, rest assured, you will see me in Parliament doing the work for you in a very concerted, focused, but at the same time very controlled manner.
All right. I have a very good question here from Sherilyn. She's not actually old enough to vote, but she has got a school project and she wants to do like a presentation tomorrow on you. And one of the questions is, she's very interested in the feasibility of the SDP's manifesto, the 4 yeses one. And given that people are questioning it, what are your plans to manage it financially in the long run? How are you proposing to pay for it?
What's her name again?
Sherilyn.
I beg your pardon, I didn't.
Sherilyn.
Carolyn?
Sherilyn. Yeah.
Sherilyn?
Yeah.
Sherilyn, thanks so much for your question. Oh my gosh, I'm so encouraged that You're not really old enough to vote, but you're still participating. Um, I've mentioned about how we're going to be able to fund these programs using the income from our reserves, not the reserves itself. I want to emphasize that. And I think it's something that's eminently doable. Um, the difference here is this, okay? We want to legislate it. We want to put it as an act, whereby then people don't have to depend on the PAP's goodwill and how they feel on this certain time of the year, right? And I'm referring, of course, to the Merdeka generation package or the Pioneer generation package. Don't forget, these packages, financial assistance plans, they're all ad hoc, they're all temporary. It runs out in a few years' time. But when you legislate, for example, minimum wage, you legislate income for our elderly, you legislate retrenchment benefits, all these then goes into law. And whoever then takes over as government would have to comply with such laws, right? So this is something which then people know. Then they have the security, and they don't have to say, oh, when is this going to last? And when you know that, then what you can do is then you can make longer term plans, right? It's the difficulty is that people don't know whether you're going to get this money not next year. Then how do you plan for your lives? Okay, so these are things that we want to push for. And as far as their viability is concerned, sustainability is concerned, let's get our priority right. Once you get your priority right, meaning that we look up to society as a whole and help those that are most vulnerable, then I think society then can continue to progress. Otherwise, I can tell you this, with the situation where the rich continue to get richer and the poor and the vulnerable get bogged down more and more. And when that wealth divide, the income divide continues to widen, our society is going to be in so much trouble. The morale is going to be down, your national pride is not there, and it's going to be a huge, huge difficulty. Let me also take this opportunity to address this. People think that just because we put all these programs up, it's a welfare state, okay? And welfare state, everybody's going to be lazy. Well, research has shown over and over again it's not true. These programs exist in some of the developed countries for ages already, whether it is in some Asian countries or whether you're talking about Scandinavian countries, in Germany and so on. These countries have been found to be very innovative, very productive. People on the happiness index scale rank other countries very highly, right? And you're talking about society, they're being very proud of where they come from. And these are the qualities that we must observe and where possible learn from. And these are things that we're going to continue to champion when we get into Parliament. Thank you. Thank you for your question, Charlotte.
All right, we've got another question here from Amy Matsumoto, Block 620. So she asks, and I assume it's a lady, "Hi Dr. Chee, can you share what you perceive are the issues that millennials and Gen Zs are concerned about, and how are you going to tackle them when elected to Parliament?"
I know you guys are very concerned about climate change, and rightly so, okay? And that's why the Young Democrats came up with, we did a lot of work, we did a lot of consultation, put our minds together, and we proposed the climate change policy. No, look, this is not just another policy position. This is something, the word used here is existential threat. Okay? If we don't get things right, there will come, and this is not coming from me, your scientists, climate scientists are saying that there will come a time when there's a trigger, where even whatever you try to do, that you cannot reverse the process anymore. Well, we're not going to be around. At least my generation, we're not going to be around. But you guys are going to have to face the calamity if there is some serious changes to our not if, when our climate changes beyond reverse. So this is one issue which I hope that our millennials, and not millennials, mom, dads, if you are, if you're concerned about your children and you want to leave a better society, a better world, a better planet for them, don't ignore this very serious threat. And that's why we're advocating that we should uh, get rid of fuel combustible cars, right? Turn to electric vehicles. Make sure that we start having renewable, depend on renewable energy rather than continue to depend on burning fossil fuels for energy. These are things that are very important, and I know that my children, for example, they're very concerned about it too, and I keep asking to pay attention to it and make sure wherever you can, you push your politicians to make this world livable when you guys grow up and to be in 20, 30 years time.
Okay, we have another question here. I think we have a couple questions on education, and they revolve around the limited slots or spaces in certain institutions, and about how certain students are left behind because they are slower learners. How would you address that?
You know, I'm a slow developer. I was a slow developer in school. I never really lagged that far behind, but I was never right at the top either. But you know, when I started going through my A levels, you know, I slept walk through the 2 years. Right, I did so badly that I couldn't even I didn't qualify for NUS, and that's the problem, because I just felt at that time we were drilled to memorize all these facts, and I don't know what I learned. And every time what we did was just pick up your 10-year series and try to spot questions, or not that try to memorize model answers. I just felt it was just so dry, right? So after my A levels, I was at NS. I did my BMT in the army, and then I was seconded over to the police side, and I did my A levels as a private candidate. Again, I just couldn't get anywhere with it. Then after my NS, I decided that I just couldn't cut it in Singapore. So I worked for a little while, you know, gave tuition, saved up a bit, and with the help of my family, went over to the US. When I was in the US, I walked into my professor's office and I sat with him in front of him. And I was shocked when he asked me, so what courses do you want to take this semester? And I said, why are you asking me? Aren't you supposed to be telling me what I should be studying? But in the system in the US, they encouraged you to find your own way, find your own interests. And I did. And I found myself growing intellectually, academically, and I started doing very well because they paid attention to me. I was just another digit, right? So, you know, and never one of my wildest dreams that I think one day I'll be doing my PhD, but I did. And you know, as I was studying, the work is hard. It's not easy, but it never felt tedious. I don't know if you know what I mean, but I woke up and I just looked forward to going to my lab to do my research and so on and so forth. And I came back, and then I started teaching at the university. So my answer to that question is to tell you that I long so much, and also seeing what my children have to go through, I long so much to reform the education system. I know that there's so much we can do to make sure that our students not just learn, but they not just study, I beg your pardon, but really to learn. And I hope that we can achieve that and attain it. And to all of you who are still studying, take it from me, okay? Don't give up. Don't let them keep telling you you're only so good. Everything comes from you being to taking control of your own destiny, and to make sure that you chart your own way, and don't let anybody tell you you cannot make it, okay?
All right. Dr. Chee, I think we've got one last question here because we are running out of time. But before I ask the last question, I know that there are a lot of questions actually which we have not gone through because there are just so many. But like I said, we have got limited time. So for those who still have like burning questions, Dr. Chee will be doing his meet and greet at Bukit Batok in the next few days. So if you have any questions, please stay updated on our Facebook, Instagram. We will keep you updated as to when and where Dr. Chee will be. So you can meet him, see him face to face, shake his hand and ask him your question. Yeah, he will make the time for you. All right. We have also received some feedback on the chat, some very useful feedback, and we will be sure to take it on board. Okay. So one last question. We're just going to combine these questions. Okay. I think it's got to do with Dr. Chee. What are your green initiatives for Bukit Batok specifically, and also segue to what will be your plan ahead if you do not unfortunately get elected this time around?
Did you say green?
Yeah, green initiatives.
Right. Well, yeah, I think it's hugely important for us to make sure that we keep our space as green as possible. And in this sense, I think it's important when in Parliament for us to make sure that we push for some of these green policies. For example, I mentioned about us pushing for electric vehicles, to go 100% electric vehicle. We proposed 2050, by 2050. And I remember late last year, Mr. Masagos, minister, he was environment minister, I saw a report where he said, no, we can't do that. Because what are you going to do, right? How the electric car is going to be charged? You can't build, technologically not possible, and so on and so forth. That was late last year. Then in February this year, when we put up a paper and we said, hey, by 2015, we should be able to go 100% EVs, electric vehicles. Guess what? A couple of weeks later, during the budget, Mr. Heng Swee Keat then came up and said that Singapore will go 100% electric vehicles by 2040. So this is the kind of thing that is so important when you don't have an opposition to push the government. They tend to slack a little bit. They tend to take it easy a little bit, and they don't find urgency in pushing for certain policies. So this is why I say it's so important for us to be in Parliament and push for these initiatives. Now, as far as the question about if I'm not elected come Friday, I've said it before, I've dedicated my whole life to fighting for Singapore, to want to come and hopefully be an MP that Bukit Batok residents can be proud of, to have a friend in their MP, to have a leader that they can believe in. I cannot see myself not going on. It's something which I've spent my whole life doing. This is the country that I was born in. It's the only place that I know that I've called home. I see myself here continuing on this fight. And if it takes the rest of my life to do it, then consider it done.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chee. And with that, we'll end this AMA. Thank you very much, Batokians, for coming. And I think this was really successful, and having you guys on is really good. We will definitely be looking to have this again. Once again, a big thank you to Dr. Chee for spending the time here with us. And yeah, we look forward to seeing all of you on the trail, on the road to the polls on Friday.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See ya.